Don't show up at the wedding. My mom messaged you saying your kids make everything uncomfortable. My sister responded with a laughing emoji. I said, guess you won't be needing my card for the venue then. The group chat lit up with laughter, completely clueless about what was coming next. Can you believe your own sister would send you a text like this? Randy, we think it's best if you don't come to the wedding. You and your kids just make things awkward, and we want this day to be perfect for Natalie. But the real kick in the gut? My sister, Natalie, responded with a laughing emoji. Yeah, a laughing emoji. The anger was so hot, I barely saw through the tears as I typed back. Then you won't need my card for the venue. The family group chat, obliviously bursting with more laughter, had no idea the earthquake they just triggered. See, growing up in Westlake, Ohio, I always knew where I stood in our family. My mom, Diane, she was the ultimate perfectionist. Her whole world revolved around appearances, what the neighbors thought. Our house, spotless, clothes, pressed, family photos, magazine ready. But beneath that polished veneer, there was this messy, tangled web of favoritism and impossible standards. Natalie, 3 years younger, was the golden child. Blonde, petite, everything my mom dreamed of. Cheer captain, homecoming queen, graduated with honors, then snagged a business degree, exactly what mom wanted for herself. Me, I was a designated black sheep. Wild, curly hair, preferred sketchbooks to pom-poms, always questioning authority. That, of course, mortified my status-conscious mother. By 16, I knew I wanted a creative career. Mom dismissed it as a hobby, not a real job. When I announced I'd major in graphic design, she actually cried at the dinner table, lamenting my wasted potential, while Natalie just patted her hand sympathetically. The chasm between us only widened when I got pregnant at 24 with my son, Tyler. The relationship with his dad had ended months before I even knew I was expecting. When I told my family, my mother's first words weren't, "Are you okay?" or "How can I help?" They were, "What will people think?" Natalie, fresh off her MBA and starting a fancy marketing job, looked at me with a sickening blend of pity and superiority. "Oh, Randy," she cooed. "How are you going to manage a baby? You can barely manage yourself." My mom nodded in agreement, her face a mask of disappointment. Despite their complete lack of support, I finished my degree while pregnant, gave birth to Tyler between my final exams, and graduated 3 weeks later. My newborn was in my arms, and there was no family in the audience. Those first few years were brutal. I worked freelance design jobs from a tiny apartment, learning to nurse while typing with one hand, surviving on fumes. My mother's rare visits weren't support, they were inspections. Criticisms rained down. The formula I used, the secondhand furniture. "You should have thought about all this before getting pregnant," she'd snap whenever I mentioned being tired or stressed. Her assistance always came with strings attached, making it clear I was a burden, an embarrassment. 4 years after Tyler, I met David. He was kind, creative, and for 2 years, I really thought we'd make it. Emma was a beautiful surprise, initially bringing us closer. But by the time she turned 2, things fell apart. David's musician career meant irregular income, long absences. He eventually moved to LA for a recording opportunity, leaving us behind with promises that faded into occasional calls and missed child support. So, there I was at 28, a single mother of 2 incredible, energetic kids, making it work through sheer grit. I'd built a home business, allowing me to do school pickups and sick days, then working late into the night. Family gatherings became exercises in endurance. Mom would fawn over Natalie's career and dating life, then make pointed comments about my kids' behavior or my appearance. "Randy, you might want to try that new diet I read about," she'd declare loudly across the Thanksgiving table. Or, "Can't you get Tyler to sit still for 5 minutes?" Natalie was never so fidgety. The comparisons were endless, always unfavorable. Natalie's trendy apartment versus my modest rental, her designer clothes versus my practical momwear, her business trips to New York versus my rare amusement park treats with the kids. The worst part, watching my children absorb it. Tyler, perceptive and sensitive, would withdraw around Grandma and Aunt Natalie. Emma, naturally bubbly, would try harder and harder for their approval, only to be corrected for being too loud or too messy. Still, I persisted. I brought them to Sunday dinners, remembered birthdays with thoughtful, handmade gifts, always met with polite but underwhelming thanks. I even hosted holidays when I could afford it, enduring Mom's subtle redecorating and not-so-subtle cooking improvements. Family is family, I tell myself. The kids deserve to know their relatives, even if those relatives are deeply flawed. Then came the family dinner 6 months ago. Natalie announced her engagement to James, son of Harold Wilson, owner of the largest real estate development company in our county. My mother practically vibrated with excitement. She was already picturing the social boost. Just think, Diane, James's mother, Eleanor, had apparently gushed. Our grandchildren will have the best of everything. I watched Mom's eyes slide over to Tyler and Emma, quietly playing cards. I knew exactly what she was thinking. In her mind, they weren't part of that grandchildren equation. They were complications, imperfect extensions of her own imperfect daughter. As everyone toasted, I smiled, offered congratulations, already sensing this wedding would be another battlefield in our family's long war of appearances versus reality. Initially, I was included. To my surprise, Mom called the next day. Randy, we're having a preliminary wedding planning lunch on Saturday. Natalie would like you to be there, she said, implying it was a great honor. Eleanor Wilson will be joining us, so please wear something appropriate. That pause before appropriate spoke volumes, but I chose hope. Maybe this wedding would bring us closer. Maybe Natalie did want me involved. That Saturday, I arrived at the upscale restaurant, wearing my nicest blouse, the only dress pants without kid stains. Emma had a cold that morning, so I was 7 minutes late after scrambling for a babysitter. Mom's tight smile when I slipped into my chair screamed that those 7 minutes had been logged as yet another one of my failings. Eleanor Wilson was exactly as I'd imagined, expensively dressed, perfectly coiffed, radiating old money confidence. She assessed me with a quick glance that somehow took in every detail, from my scuffed flats to my frizzy, humid hair. This is Diane's older daughter, Randy. Natalie introduced me with a wave of her newly manicured hand, the massive diamond flashing. She does some kind of computer art or something. I'm a graphic designer, I corrected gently, extending my hand to Eleanor. Lovely to meet you. Congratulations on your son's engagement. The lunch was a blur of venues, guest lists, and color schemes. Every suggestion I offered was politely acknowledged, then immediately dismissed. What about incorporating personal elements into the invitations? I ventured. I'd be happy to design something custom. Eleanor patted my hand. Oh, that's sweet, but we've already been in contact with Harringtons. They've done all the society weddings here for generations. Very exclusive. Mom beamed. Natalie nodded. They did Melissa Porter's wedding last year, you know, the one in Ohio Bride magazine. I just nodded, took a long sip of water, swallowing my offer along with my pride. As weeks passed, my involvement dwindled. I'd get texts about decisions already made, framed as updates, not invitations for input. The only area my participation seemed desired? Financial. We found the perfect venue, Mom announced during a rare phone call. The Grand Pavilion at Lakeside Gardens. It's stunning, but with all the extras Natalie deserves, it's running a bit higher than our budget. The careful pause. I knew what was coming. I don't suppose you could contribute anything? For your sister's special day. Despite my tight finances, I offered $5,000 for the venue. It meant dipping into my emergency fund, postponing home repairs, but I wanted to show my support. Mom's relieved thanks and promises of full involvement going forward felt, at the time, worth the sacrifice. Then, Tyler and Emma bounded into the kitchen one evening, faces alight. Aunt Natalie called. Tyler announced. She asked if I want to be a junior groomsman, and Emma gets to be a flower girl. My heart swelled. Perhaps things were turning around. Maybe my contribution secured my children's places, showing we truly were included. That weekend, the four of us went shopping for outfits. Tyler needed a suit, Emma a flower girl dress. Mom insisted on joining, claiming her expert eye was needed. The trip quickly devolved. She criticized Emma's hair. Couldn't you at least have braided it properly? And Tyler's posture. Stand up straight, for goodness sake. You look like a hooligan. When Emma accidentally knocked over a mannequin, Mom's face went rigid with embarrassment. This is precisely why children need proper discipline, she hissed at me in the changing room. How are they going to behave at an elegant wedding if they can't even control themselves in a department store? Before I could defend them, I overheard her on the phone in the hallway, voice low but clear. Yes, Natalie, we're trying on things now. I know. Yes, it's exactly what we feared. The children are completely wild, and Randy just lets them run amok. I understand your concerns. Yes, it might complicate things having them in the wedding party. We'll discuss it more later. My stomach clenched. They were reevaluating my children not as beloved family, but as liabilities. Over the next weeks, I tried to connect with Natalie privately about the wedding. Texts, calls, coffee invitations, always an excuse. Swamped with work, tastings, meeting with the planner. Then, the bridal shower. I knew nothing until I saw the photos on social media. Cousins, aunts, my mother, childhood neighbors. All there, champagne glasses raised. The caption, hashtag showering our beautiful bride with love, hashtag Natalie and James, hashtag perfect pair. I stared at those photos for hours, searching for any sign my absence was noticed. There was none. They all looked perfectly happy, perfectly complete without me. Around the same time, Aunt Susan told me James's parents had hosted a formal dinner to meet Natalie's family. All of Natalie's family, apparently, except me and my kids. When I casually mentioned it to Mom, she brushed it off. It was very last minute, very small, just immediate family. The phrase immediate family hung between us, its meaning painfully clear. In their minds, I'd been reclassified. Extended maybe. Or no family at all. Rumors started reaching me. Cousin Beth said Mom told her I was too busy with work. Uncle Robert asked if I'd opted out of planning because I was uncomfortable with formal events. Finally, after weeks of evasion, I asked Natalie directly, "So what exactly am I doing for the ceremony? Dress color? Are Tyler and Emma still in the wedding party? I need to get their outfits ready." Her response was vague, non-committal. "We're still figuring out details. The wedding party is getting kind of large, so we might need to make some adjustments. I'll let you know." I hung up, a dreadful sinking feeling. Those adjustments, I knew, meant erasing us. Still, I clung to hope. Surely, my own mother and sister wouldn't completely exclude us, especially after I'd committed a significant sum to the venue. I was wrong. The message arrived on a Thursday morning, exactly 3 weeks before the wedding. I was making breakfast for the kids. My phone, charging on the counter, chimed repeatedly with family group chat notifications. I glanced over, catching glimpses of talk about final arrangements. Mom had created the chat to keep everyone in the loop, but it mostly showcased Natalie's princess treatment. That morning, it started innocuously, Mom posting photos of floral arrangements, table settings. "Everything is coming together beautifully," she wrote. Natalie chimed in. "I can't believe it's only 3 weeks away." I was about to set my phone down when Mom's next text stopped me cold. "Randy, we think it's best if you don't come to the wedding. You and your kids just make things awkward, and we want this day to be perfect for Natalie." I froze, spatula in hand, eggs starting to burn. Before I could process it, Natalie responded, laughing emoji, "Then Mom's right. No offense, but James's family is really classy." The phone nearly slipped from my numb fingers. I shut off the stove mechanically, my mind racing. Surely this was a joke? But as I stood there, more messages appeared. "Mom again. It's nothing personal, Randy. It's just that the Wilsons have certain expectations about the type of event this will be. Children who aren't properly behaved would be a distraction. Natalie, plus you always look so stressed and tired in photos. This wedding is going to be in all the local magazines. Mom, we still appreciate the venue contribution, of course. That was very generous." I felt like I'd been physically struck. The kitchen wobbled. Tears blurred my vision. A small voice broke through my shock. "Mom, the eggs are burning. Mom, are you okay? You're crying." Tyler stood beside me, his 10-year-old face creased with concern. Behind him, Emma was arranging stuffed animals at the table, blissfully unaware of the family earthquake. I quickly wiped my eyes, forced a smile. "I'm fine, buddy. Just got something in my eye. Thanks for telling me about the eggs. Let's make some new ones." As I cracked fresh eggs into the pan with trembling hands, my shock morphed into something else. A deep, burning anger. How dare they treat my children this way? How dare they act like we were embarrassing accessories rather than family? I picked up my phone, typing, trying to keep my tone dignified despite the rage and hurt. Then you won't need my card for the venue. It was simple, direct, and apparently hilarious. Natalie immediately responded with another laughing emoji. Good one, sis, but seriously, the venue deposit is non-refundable, so thanks for that. My mother added, don't be dramatic, Randy. This is about what's best for your sister's special day. Then my father, silent until now, chimed in. Your mother's right, Randy. Sometimes it's better to step back. No need to make this about you. More messages flooded in from other family members, silently watching this public execution of my dignity. Aunt Patty, Randy dear, perhaps this is for the best. Remember Tom and Sally's anniversary party when Tyler knocked over the ice sculpture? Uncle Dave, some events just aren't kid-friendly. Nothing personal. Cousin Beth, I think what they're trying to say is more intimate ceremony equals more elegant. You understand, right? With each message, the knot in my stomach tightened. These people had known me my entire life. They'd watched me grow up, graduate, become a mother, build a career. And not one of them was standing up for me or my children. Not one was questioning the casual cruelty of excluding family from a family celebration. I set my phone face down on the counter as it buzzed. Time for breakfast, guys. I called to the kids, determined not to let them see how shaken I was. As we ate, Tyler kept shooting concerned glances my way. At 10, he sensed adult problems, but was too young to fully grasp them. 6-year-old Emma chatted happily about her school field trip, occasionally patting my hand. Are you sad, Mommy? Your eyes look rainy. I'm just having a grown-up problem, sweetie, I answered, stroking her hair. Nothing for you to worry about. But after I dropped them at school, I sat in my car in the parking lot and finally allowed myself to break down. Huge, racking sobs. It wasn't just about a wedding invitation. It was about years of being treated as lesser, of watching my children be judged and found wanting, of trying so hard to maintain connections with people who fundamentally did not respect me. When I got home, my phone showed 17 new messages in the family chat. I silenced the conversation without reading them. Whatever additional barbs they'd thrown would have to wait. I had client work to do. I refused to let their drama impact my professional responsibilities. That evening, after the kids were in bed, I finally looked. Most were variations on the same theme. I was overreacting. I was selfish. I needed to think of Natalie's happiness. The conversation had even moved on to discussing which relatives would now sit at the table originally reserved for us. I curled up on the sofa, wrapped in the quilt my grandmother had made me before she died. I cried until there were no tears left. My grandmother had been different. She'd celebrated my creativity, defended my choices, loved my children without reservation or judgment. Family is about acceptance, not perfection, she used to say. If she were still alive, I knew she would have been appalled. As midnight approached, I made tea and sat at my kitchen table, processing not just today's events, but the years of subtle and not so subtle mistreatment. The wedding exclusion wasn't an anomaly. It was the most blatant expression of how my mother and sister truly saw me and my children. The realization was both painful and strangely liberating. For years, I'd been chasing approval I would never receive, making excuses for inexcusable behavior, exposing my children to people who saw them as inconveniences. No more. This stops now, I whispered to my empty kitchen. The next morning, after the kids left for school, I called Zoe, my best friend since college. They did what? Zoe exploded after I recounted the group chat exchange. Oh my God, Randy, that's beyond cruel. That's psychological warfare. Hearing my own thoughts validated by someone I trusted helped solidify the emotional realization from the night before. This wasn't a miscommunication. It was a pattern. I don't know why I'm even surprised, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. Remember Emma's 5th birthday when Mom showed up with a cake because mine wasn't presentable enough? Zoe added, or when your sister scheduled her housewarming party on the same day as Tyler's school play, then got mad you chose his performance over her new throw pillows. More memories surfaced, each a puzzle piece sitting in plain sight. Mom correcting Tyler's table manners at Christmas, making him self-conscious. Casual remarks about how much easier Natalie's life was without my baggage. Family vacation photos where I or the kids were somehow never included. I think I've been gaslighting myself, I admitted to Zoe, making excuses, telling myself it wasn't that bad or I was too sensitive. That's what happens when you grow up with that kind of treatment, Zoe replied gently. You normalize it. But Randy, there is nothing normal about what they're doing. It's toxic, and you and your kids deserve so much better. After our call, I felt strangely calm, like the eye of an emotional hurricane. The initial shock had passed, replaced by a clear, cold anger. But I knew the real emotional processing was still to come. That clarity was shattered when Tyler came home from school that afternoon, red-rimmed eyes and a defensive hunch to his shoulders I knew all too well. What happened, buddy? I asked, sitting beside him. He was quiet for a long moment. Jake said we're not going to Aunt Natalie's wedding anymore. He said it's because we don't know how to act right, and his grandma doesn't want us there. Jake was Natalie's 10-year-old stepson from James's previous marriage. My heart broke all over again, this time for my son. Tyler, did Jake say that at school? In front of other kids? Tyler nodded, a single tear escaping. He told everyone during lunch. He said his dad is paying for a super fancy wedding, and they don't want it ruined. I took a deep breath, trying to contain the fresh wave of anger. Tyler, look at me. What Jake said isn't true. The reason we're not going to the wedding has nothing to do with you or your behavior. It's about grown-up problems between me, Grandma, and Aunt Natalie. Is it because we're not rich like Jake's family? Tyler asked with the devastating directness of children. No, honey. It's because sometimes adults make bad choices that hurt other people's feelings. And when that happens, we need to set boundaries. What are boundaries? Boundaries are rules we set to protect ourselves from people who don't treat us with respect. Like if a friend keeps taking your toys without asking, you might set a boundary by saying they can't play with your things unless they ask permission. Tyler thought about this. So, we're setting a boundary with Grandma and Aunt Natalie? Yes, we are. And that's okay. It doesn't mean we don't love them. It just means we expect to be treated with kindness and respect, just like everyone else. That evening, the call started. First Mom, then Dad, then various aunts and uncles, all delivering variations on the same message. I needed to be reasonable, not make a scene, and still follow through with the venue contribution because it was promised. I let most go to voicemail, but took my father's call. Randy, you know how your mother gets about these social events, he said, his voice that familiar mix of placating and dismissive. Just let this one go. We can have a separate family celebration after the honeymoon. Dad, do you understand what happened here? Mom and Natalie publicly uninvited your grandchildren from a family wedding, humiliating them. Now their cousin is bullying them about it at school, and you want me to just let it go? You're blowing this out of proportion, he sighed. No one meant to hurt the kids. It's just that this wedding is very important for your sister's future. The Wilsons are influential people. More influential than your own grandchildren's emotional well-being. His silence was answer enough. After hanging up, I sat at my kitchen table with a notepad, my designer's brain automatically organizing the chaos. I wrote, what we know. 1. My family excluded me and my children in the cruelest way. 2. They still expect $5,000. 3. This is part of a toxic pattern. 4. My children are being actively harmed. On the next page, what we don't know. 1. How much does James know? 2. What have they told the Wilsons? 3. What's the real story with the venue payment? 4. Who else knows? With these questions, I started investigating. First call, the Grand Pavilion at Lakeside Gardens. I identified myself as Natalie's sister, helping with wedding details. I just wanted to confirm some information about the Thompson-Wilson wedding on the 21st. I said. Of course, the coordinator replied. Yes. Here it is. Initial deposit made 2 months ago, but the final payment is actually past due. We've sent several reminders. This was interesting. I was under the impression payment had already been arranged. My contribution was meant to complete it. There is a note here about a partial payment from the sister of the bride, the coordinator confirmed, but we haven't received it. According to our contract, The final payment is due 14 days before the event, which would be this coming Friday. Without it, we can't guarantee the reservation will be held. After thanking her, I sat back stunned. The venue payment wasn't an extra they hoped to extract. It was a critical budget component they were counting on, despite uninviting me. Next call, Aunt Susan, Mom's younger sister, the most likely to give me straight answers. Aunt Susan, can I ask you something about Natalie's wedding? I need you to be honest. Of course, honey. I heard there was some drama about you not attending. Your mother said you were having some personal issues and thought it best to skip it. Her voice was carefully neutral. That's not true. They explicitly uninvited me and the kids. But what I want to know is what they've told James's family about us. Have you met the Wilsons? Susan's long pause. Yes, I met them at the engagement dinner. Eleanor Wilson is very concerned with appearances. During that dinner, your mother mentioned you only once. She said you were an artist living in another state. I live 20 minutes away from her house. I know. And when James asked if you had children, your mother changed the subject very quickly. I got the distinct impression that she's pretending you have a very different life than you actually do. A cold realization washed over me. They're ashamed of us. They're literally hiding our existence to impress these people. I think your mother sees this as Natalie's big chance to marry into the social circle she's always wanted, Susan said carefully. She doesn't want anything to complicate that narrative. And my children and I complicate the narrative. In her mind, yes. You know your mother, Randy. She's always been obsessed with appearances. After thanking Aunt Susan, I made one more call. A lawyer friend specializing in contract law. I explained the situation with the venue payment. If you never signed anything, you have no legal obligation, he assured me. A verbal promise of a gift doesn't constitute a binding agreement. If your name isn't on the venue contract, you're in the clear legally. What if they put my name on the contract without my knowledge? Said I was covering part of the payment. That would be problematic for them, not you. They can't obligate you to a contract you never signed, but it might create complications with the venue if they're expecting your payment. By the end of the day, I had a much clearer picture. My mother and sister had been counting on my financial contribution while simultaneously deciding I wasn't worthy of attending. They had effectively erased me from their carefully constructed family narrative to impress the Wilsons. And most disturbingly, they saw absolutely nothing wrong with any of this. As I tucked my children into bed that night, watching their innocent faces relaxed in sleep, a steely resolve formed in my heart. This wasn't just about a wedding invitation anymore. This was about teaching my children what it meant to have self-respect, to set healthy boundaries, and to recognize when relationships were damaging rather than nurturing. We deserve better, I whispered, kissing their foreheads. And I'm going to make sure we get it. The next morning, I woke with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. The path forward wasn't about revenge or drama, but about justice, self-respect, and breaking unhealthy patterns. I opened my laptop and began organizing my thoughts into a concrete plan. First, I consulted again with my lawyer friend, Mike. We met for coffee, and I brought all the text messages and information. Based on everything you've told me, you have no legal obligation to provide this money, Mike confirmed. However, if they listed you as a partial payer on the contract without your signature, that could create complications for them with the venue. That's exactly what I suspect happened, I said. My mother has a habit of making commitments on other people's behalf and expecting them to follow through. In that case, I'd recommend formally rescinding your offer in writing. Send an email to both your mother and sister, CC the venue, stating clearly that due to your exclusion from the event, you are withdrawing your previously offered contribution. Won't that make me look vindictive, like I'm trying to sabotage the wedding? Mike shook his head. It's not vindictive to withdraw financial support for an event you've been explicitly told not to attend. It's actually the logical consequence of their decision to exclude you. With Mike's guidance, I drafted a clear, firm email. Professional, factual, no emotional language. I explained that as my presence and that of my children was not welcome at the wedding, I was formally rescinding my offer. I wished them well and requested they not contact me further about financial contributions to an event we were prohibited from attending. After sending, I temporarily blocked both their numbers. I needed space to implement the rest of my plan without the emotional manipulation I knew would follow. Next, I focused on creating a special alternative day for my kids and me on the wedding date. I wanted them to understand that while rejection hurts, we could choose to fill our lives with joy. How would you guys feel about going to Adventure World on the 21st? I asked over dinner. They've opened that new water slide section you've been wanting to try, Tyler. Their enthusiasm was immediate, genuine. They'd been asking for months, but tickets weren't cheap. I'd been saving for a special occasion. What better occasion than celebrating our worth as a family unit? Is that the same day as Aunt Natalie's wedding? Tyler asked perceptively. Yes, it is. I thought we could have our own special day while they have theirs. But why aren't we going to the wedding anymore? Emma asked. Her small forehead wrinkled. I took a deep breath. Sometimes, Emma, people make choices that aren't very kind. Grandma and Aunt Natalie have made some choices that hurt our feelings. When that happens, it's okay to choose not to spend time with those people for a while. Did we do something bad? Her trembling lower lip nearly broke me. No, sweetie. You didn't do anything wrong at all. This is about them, not us. And instead of feeling sad about missing their party, we're going to have our own amazing day of fun. As they discussed which rides to try first, I reflected on how these conversations were teaching them crucial life lessons about self-worth. Love shouldn't be conditional. True family accepts you as you are. It's okay to step back from relationships that consistently make you feel inadequate. Over the following days, I ignored the mounting voicemails and messages from various family members. Most pressured me to reconsider my stance on the payment, with increasing guilt-tripping. My father tried to appeal to my loyalty. My aunt called me stubborn and selfish. Natalie sent a text accusing me of trying to ruin the biggest day of her life. I left them all unanswered, focusing on my work, my children, and the small community of genuine friends who rallied around us. Zoe organized a movie night. My neighbor Barbara, a retired teacher, brought homemade cookies and offered extra babysitting. My regular clients, sensing something was wrong, sent thoughtful messages checking on my well-being. It was during this period of enforced radio silence that I received an unexpected call from a number I didn't recognize. Randy, this is James, Natalie's fiancé, the male voice said. I hope you don't mind me calling you directly. I got your number from the family contact list. I hesitated, unsure of his purpose. Hello, James. This is unexpected. I'm sure it is. Look, I'll get right to the point. There seems to be some confusion about the wedding guest list, and I'm trying to get clarity. Natalie told me you didn't want to attend our wedding, but then I heard from the venue that there's some issue with a payment you had offered. I'm honestly confused. The genuine bewilderment in his voice suggested he truly had no idea. I took a deep breath. James, I'm going to tell you something that might be difficult to hear. I never said I didn't want to attend your wedding. In fact, until last week, my children and I were under the impression that we were not only invited but participating in the ceremony. Tyler was supposed to be a junior groomsman, and Emma was going to be a flower girl. What? But Natalie said, she told me you weren't comfortable with formal events and preferred not to come. She said your kids had some behavioral issues that made large gatherings difficult for them. The hurt must have been evident in my silence because he quickly continued, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have repeated that. I'm just trying to understand. The truth is, James, my mother and sister explicitly uninvited us via group text. They said my children and I make things awkward and would interfere with having a perfect day. They still expected me to contribute $5,000 toward the venue despite uninviting us. That can't be right, he said, but the uncertainty in his voice suggested he was beginning to question the narrative. I can forward you the entire text exchange if you'd like to see it for yourself. Would you? I'd really appreciate that. This doesn't sound like the Natalie I know, but, well, there have been some strange tensions around the wedding planning that I haven't fully understood. After our call, I forwarded the entire humiliating text thread to James, along with screenshots of follow-up messages pressuring me to still pay. It wasn't about creating problems. It was about bringing truth to a situation shrouded in lies. James called back 30 minutes later, his voice noticeably shaken. I don't even know what to say. I had no idea this was happening. My parents have been asking about meeting you and your kids. And Natalie kept making excuses about why it hadn't happened yet. I just assumed you were busy. Or maybe there was some minor family tension. Not this. I'm sorry you're finding out this way, I said sincerely. For what it's worth, I think Natalie genuinely cares about you. She just also cares tremendously about impressions and status, a value she inherited directly from our mother. I need to talk to her about this and my parents. They would be horrified if they knew family members were being excluded like this. That's not how we operate. After hanging up, I felt a strange mix of vindication and sadness. I hadn't set out to create drama, but the truth had a way of surfacing. Whatever happened next was out of my hands. I had been honest, set appropriate boundaries, and was focusing on creating a positive experience for my children. For the next 5 days, I heard nothing. The sudden silence after days of constant pressure was disconcerting, but also peaceful. I finalized our Adventure World plans, packing small backpacks for the kids. We talked excitedly about rides and the new vertical drop water slide. As the wedding day approached, I felt stronger and more centered than I had in years. The initial shock and hurt had transformed into quiet determination. This painful experience had forced me to confront and begin dismantling the dysfunctional patterns that had defined my family relationships for decades. You seem different, Mom, Tyler observed the night before our theme park visit. Not sad anymore. I am different, I agreed. Sometimes hard things help us grow stronger, like how plants need storms to make their roots dig deeper. I smiled. Exactly like that. Now get some sleep. Tomorrow is going to be an adventure. The morning of Natalie's wedding dawned bright and clear. I woke before my alarm, a mix of emotions swirling, despite my efforts at detachment. Somewhere across town, my sister was preparing to become a wife. My mother was likely fussing over every detail, creating the perfect illusion for the Wilsons. And here I was, choosing a different path. I pushed those thoughts aside as I heard excited footsteps. Mom, is it time to go to Adventure World? Emma burst in, already wearing her swimsuit, inside out and backwards. Tyler followed more sedately, but the gleam in his eyes betrayed equal excitement. It's going to be 87 degrees and sunny, perfect for water slides. I laughed, helping Emma fix her suit. Let's have breakfast first, then we can head out. The park opens at 10. As we ate Mickey Mouse-shaped pancakes, a special occasion tradition, I kept my phone off, tucked away. Today wasn't about what we were missing. It was about what we were choosing to create together. Adventure World lived up to its name. We spent the morning conquering daring rides, Tyler leading with newfound confidence, Emma squealing with delight as water splashed. We took silly photos with costumed characters, indulged in overpriced theme park food, and played every game. During a brief rest, Tyler looked up at me with serious eyes. This is better than a boring wedding anyway, right, Mom? I considered my answer. Different experiences are valuable in different ways, Tyler. Weddings can be beautiful celebrations. But today, this is exactly where we're meant to be, having fun together. As the afternoon progressed, Emma won a stuffed unicorn at a ring toss game with a little strategic assistance from a charmed teenage booth operator. Tyler conquered his fear of the tallest water slide, emerging with a triumphant grin. I took dozens of photos, capturing their joy in our connection. By late afternoon, exhaustion set in. Emma's steps dragged, and even Tyler admitted he was tired. We headed home, stopping for ice cream. It wasn't until we arrived home, kids settled with a movie, that I finally retrieved my phone and turned it on. Immediately, it buzzed with a cascade of notifications. 15 missed calls, 23 texts, 7 voicemails. The first, from my mother at 10:30 a.m., was surprisingly composed. Randy, I hope you'll reconsider your position about the venue payment. The wedding starts at 4 o'clock, and we need to resolve this. Call me back immediately. The second, from noon, had a distinct edge of panic. Randy, this is getting ridiculous. The venue manager is saying there's an issue with the final payment. Call me back right now. By the third, at 1:15, her composure had completely crumbled. Randy, please, you have to help us. The venue manager is threatening to cancel everything if the final payment isn't made by 3 o'clock. I don't know what you said to them, but they're insisting the contract listed you as a partial payer, and they can't proceed without your payment or a signature removing you from the agreement. Please, Natalie is in tears. You can't ruin her wedding like this. The remaining messages grew increasingly desperate, culminating in a sobbing Natalie begging me to just sign the stupid paper or pay the money because the manager was being completely unreasonable and the photographer and florist were already there setting up. I sat down, absorbing this unexpected turn. I had sent that email to clarify my position, not to actively create problems. I'd assumed my mother would simply cover the gap herself. After making sure the kids were engrossed in their movie, I called the venue. The manager explained that my mother had indeed listed me as a responsible party for part of the payment on the contract, creating a legal complication when I explicitly withdrew my offer. "We tried to be flexible," she explained, "but when no payment was forthcoming and no amended agreement was signed, we had to follow our contract terms. We couldn't hold the space without full payment. Has the situation been resolved?" I asked. "Not to my knowledge. The last update I received was that they were attempting to secure an alternative venue for a scaled-down reception. The ceremony was moved to the church that was originally just for the service." I sat in silence. I hadn't intended to disrupt the wedding itself, only to establish boundaries. Yet, it seemed my mother's presumption, putting my name on legal documents without my consent, had created exactly the chaos she claimed to be avoiding. At 7:30, after getting the children bathed and in pajamas, I finally returned my mother's call. She answered immediately. "It's a bit late to call now, isn't it?" Her voice was brittle with exhaustion and barely contained fury. "I've been busy all day with the kids. I just got your messages. What happened with the wedding?" "As if you don't know. Your little stunt nearly ruined everything. We had to move the reception to the church basement at the last minute. Half the floral arrangements couldn't be transferred. The cake arrived at the original venue and had to be rushed across town. The photographer charged extra for the venue change. Eleanor Wilson was horrified by the disorganization. "I'm sorry things were complicated," I said carefully. "But I don't understand why you put my name on a contract without my permission. That created this problem, not my withdrawal of a gift I was never obligated to give in the first place." "Gift? This was your sister's wedding. Family helps family. Family also doesn't exclude family from important life events via group text." The line went quiet. "Is that what this was about? Revenge because your feelings were hurt?" "No, Mom. This was about respecting myself and my children enough to not financially support people who treat us as embarrassments. This was about showing my kids that it's not okay to let people use you while simultaneously pushing you aside." "Oh, that's rich coming from you. Always so righteous about your choices. Never mind how they affect everyone else. Do you have any idea the damage you've caused?" James's parents left early. They said they'd never seen such a disorganized event. Before I could respond, I heard Natalie's voice. "You vindictive bitch," my sister hissed when she got on the line. "You couldn't stand that I was having something special, could you? You had to make it all about you and your issues." "Natalie, I didn't create this situation. All I did was withdraw financial support from an event I was explicitly told not to attend. The consequences came from Mom putting my name on legal documents without my knowledge or consent. You could have just paid it anyway, or signed their stupid form. You knew how important this day was to me. And you knew how hurtful it was to uninvite your niece and nephew from being in your wedding party. You knew how humiliating it was to exclude your own sister via group text. You made your choices and I made mine." The conversation devolved further, Natalie alternating between tearful accusations and angry threats about how I would regret this. I remained calm, repeatedly bringing the focus back to the actual sequence of events and the natural consequences of their actions. After hanging up, I was surprised to receive a text message from James. "I want you to know that none of this was your fault. What happened today opened my eyes to some dynamics I hadn't fully recognized. Thank you for your honesty. I hope someday we can start fresh as family." The next day, social media was conspicuously quiet. Typically, my mother and sister would have been posting professional wedding photos with carefully crafted captions about the perfect day. Their silence spoke volumes about how far the reality had diverged from their expectations. 3 days later, I received a surprising call from Eleanor Wilson, James's mother. "Randy, this is Eleanor Wilson. James gave me your number." "Not at all, Mrs. Wilson. How can I help you? Please call me Eleanor." I wanted to reach out personally to invite you and your children to brunch this Sunday. James has told us so much about his new niece and nephew, and we're eager to meet you all. I was momentarily speechless. That's very kind of you. We'd be happy to come. Wonderful. And Randy, I want you to know that James has explained the circumstances surrounding the wedding. My husband and I were quite disturbed to learn how you and your children were treated. That's not the kind of family values we raised our son with. After we arranged the details, I sat in stunned silence. Somehow, in attempting to erase me from their perfect family narrative, my mother and sister had instead revealed the true dysfunction lurking beneath the surface all along. The brunch with the Wilsons turned out to be a pivotal moment. Harold and Eleanor welcomed us into their spacious, comfortable home with genuine warmth. Unlike the intimidating elitists my mother had portrayed, they were down to earth. They immediately engaged with my children in a way that put them at ease. Tyler, James tells me you're quite the baseball player, Harold said, showing him signed memorabilia. Emma, would you like to see the dollhouse that was mine when I was a little girl? Eleanor asked. I've kept it all these years, hoping someday I'd have a granddaughter to share it with. As the children explored, Eleanor joined me on the patio. I want to be direct with you, Randy, she said. What your mother told us about you and what we've learned for ourselves are very different things. What exactly did she tell you? I asked. That you lived out of state, that you had made lifestyle choices the family found difficult, that you struggled with stability. Her diplomatic phrasing couldn't fully disguise the implication. And now I see a devoted mother raising two wonderful children. James speaks highly of your work as a designer. And most importantly, I see someone who had the strength to stand up for herself and her children in a difficult situation. It wasn't about revenge, I said, needing her to understand. It was about not allowing my children to internalize the message that they weren't good enough. I understand that better than you might think, Eleanor said, surprising me. My own mother was similar to yours in many ways. Appearances meant everything. I wasn't the daughter she wanted either. That conversation marked the beginning of an unexpected alliance. While my own mother maintained a chilly distance, the Wilsons began regularly including us in family gatherings. Emma and Tyler developed a genuine friendship with their new uncle, James, who, it turned out, had a talent for connecting with children that surprised even Natalie. In the months that followed, I committed to therapy, finally unpacking the years of conditional love and subtle undermining that had shaped my self-perception. My therapist helped me understand that the wedding incident hadn't created the family dysfunction. It had merely exposed patterns that had existed for decades. Your mother has narcissistic tendencies, my therapist explained. And your sister learned early on that emulating your mother's values was the path to approval. Neither of them is likely to fundamentally change without their own committed therapy work. With this understanding, I began to establish clearer boundaries. I declined Sunday dinners that invariably devolved into criticism. I limited phone conversations with Mom to 15 minutes, redirecting when she began disparaging me or the children. I filtered information carefully, sharing only what felt safe. The children flourished. Tyler's teacher commented on his increased confidence. Emma's anxiety about being good enough gradually faded, replaced by natural enthusiasm. My business grew as well, as I redirected energy previously spent managing family drama into developing my client base. I secured several large corporate contracts, providing greater stability. When Thanksgiving approached, I braced myself for the usual complicated negotiations. To my surprise, James called. We're hosting at our place this year, he said. Eleanor suggested we start some new traditions. We'd really love for you and the kids to join us. What about my mother and father? I asked carefully. They've been invited, too, but with clear expectations about behavior. Eleanor had a rather direct conversation with your mother about how family members are to be treated in our home. The Thanksgiving gathering was tense at times, but ultimately healing. My mother was noticeably subdued. My father seemed relieved by the structure Eleanor subtly imposed. Natalie, 6 months into marriage, and faced with her husband's obvious affection for his niece and nephew, made awkward but genuine attempts to connect. After the holiday, Natalie reached out. We met for coffee. I'm not good at this, she began, after minutes of nervous small talk. Admitting when I've been wrong isn't exactly a skill Mom taught either of us. No, it wasn't, I agreed. The wedding was a disaster, she said bluntly. Not because of the venue change, but because I let Mom convince me that appearances matter more than actual relationships. James was really upset with me afterward in ways I didn't expect. How so? He said he didn't recognize the person I became during the wedding planning. That excluding you and the kids showed a side of me he found disturbing. We've been in couples counseling since then. I was surprised by her candor. That couldn't have been easy to hear. It wasn't, but he wasn't wrong. She twisted her napkin. I'm not asking for forgiveness right away. I know what we did was cruel. I just want to know if there's a way forward, eventually. Tyler and Emma are the only niece and nephew I'll ever have, and I've been a terrible aunt. Healing takes time, I said carefully. I'm open to rebuilding our relationship, but it needs to be different than before. My priority is protecting my children from the kind of treatment we've all normalized for too long. Over the following months, Natalie made consistent, if sometimes awkward, efforts. She came to Tyler's school play. She remembered Emma's birthday with a thoughtfully selected art set. Small steps, but meaningful ones. My mother proved less capable of change. She maintained I had overreacted and deliberately caused problems for attention. When I held firm to my boundaries, she adopted a martyr position, telling extended family I was keeping her grandchildren away. Eventually, I accepted that my relationship with my mother might never be what I'd hoped for. Instead of trying to earn her approval, I focused on breaking the cycle with my own children. They would grow up knowing their worth didn't depend on impossible standards. The family you're born into isn't always the family that nurtures you, I explained to Tyler one evening after a difficult phone call with my mother. Sometimes we have to create our own chosen family of people who love us as we are. Like Aunt Zoe and Miss Barbara next door, he asked. Exactly. And now Uncle James and the Wilsons, too. And we're a family, the three of us, Emma added, with the simple wisdom of childhood. The best family. As I hugged my children close, I reflected on the painful journey that led us to this point of greater health and authenticity. The wedding text, initially such a devastating rejection, had ultimately been the catalyst for profound change. By standing up for myself and my children, I had broken generations of toxic patterns and created space for genuine connections to flourish. Forgiveness, I was learning, didn't require reconciliation with those who remained committed to harmful behavior. It meant releasing the anger that tied me to the pain, while maintaining the boundaries that protected our well-being. It meant acknowledging the reality of who people were, rather than clinging to fantasies. Most importantly, it meant teaching my children, through example, that love shouldn't hurt, that family should be a source of support, and that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from relationships that diminish rather than enhance your life. Today, 2 years after that fateful text, our lives have found a new equilibrium. My relationship with Natalie continues to slowly heal. James has become the kind of uncle my children deserve. The Wilsons have embraced us as genuine family members. My father makes occasional efforts to connect on his own terms, and my mother remains at a carefully managed distance. It isn't the family story I would have written for myself as a young girl, but it's authentic, honest, and ultimately healthier than the facade we maintained for so many years. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members? What helped you find the strength to prioritize your well-being over unhealthy family expectations? Tell me what you think. I really want to know.